everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to Head Talks in our new series. Were you here last week? If you weren't here last week, we started a brand new series. Hi, ladies. Can you see okay?
Thank you.
All right, I'll wait till they get settled.
We were greeting the new people, so.
Yeah, I was too. That's more important. I was late too because I was greeting the new people.
I was too.
Yes, it's exciting to have new people. So last week we started our new series, and this series is going to be really interesting. It's the Masters. Why are you giggling, Edith? Is that funny? You were going to say they're all interesting.
No, you said you were going to have any kind of master we could think of.
Yes, so that's what I'm going to say. So if you didn't hear what Edith said, this is going to be, the Masters series is about the masters of any field. And I just started with literature, but we're also going to be doing, somebody wanted the masters in sports.
Oh, golf.
And somebody, well, John, I remember a while ago, maybe all the way back when we were in China, said comedians, and I thought this is a perfect time. We could do masters of comedy, right? We can do masters of science. We can do masters of music. We can do masters of whatever you want. So just keep those ideas coming, and we'll do that. It's probably going to be a whole summertime series that we can fill up. All right, so as I say, today we are doing a 4-week series on the Masters in Literature. Who remembers who we did last week?
Charles Dickens.
Dickens, because he had a very memorable, oh my goodness, what a memorable life he had. So we're going to do a quick review before we get to today's person. All right, so Charles Dickens, no one realized that he had 2 middle names. That was surprising. But really, what did he accomplish? What was his great accomplishment aside from his literary genius?
A spotlight on working conditions of the poor.
Excellent, yes. He put a spotlight on the working conditions of the poor in the industrial age of England. It was also happening here as well. He also created some things that were absolutely brand new. He did something that had never been done before. Actually, when he started writing for a newspaper, he was giving little bits of a story, a couple of chapters of a whole story. And that was considered the very first what?
Serial.
Yeah, the very first soap opera. And when he did that, I meant to put this in here, but I probably didn't. When he did that, at the end of the chapters, before you got into the next one, what did he do to bring you back?
And a cliffhanger.
He added a cliffhanger. He would always end with some enticing, juicy piece of information that would make you want to go buy the newspaper. And so he's the inventor of the cliffhanger. He's the inventor of the soap opera. And because he was doing these in little bits and pieces, he's also the inventor of the paperback book. All right, we did not have that before. So as he's putting a spotlight on working conditions, he's also putting a spotlight on morality. Remember that?
Yeah.
From last week? And what is maybe the most influential book of morality that Dickens is famous for?
The Christian Journal.
Excellent. Wow, Edith, you are an A student today. You have all the answers. Yes. Yeah, A Christmas Carol. It's a political story in as much as it is a spiritual story. And it also coincides with Queen Victoria and Albert and how they were celebrating Christmas. And we have for the first time a Christmas tradition that we all do now. Do you know what it is? What did they introduce?
Christmas tree.
Yeah, the tree, the Christmas tree. Yeah, the Christmas tree is an ancient German tradition, and it was brought into vogue during the time of Victoria and Albert. And then we have his other great stories
Oh, I still haven't seen.
that brought to life, yeah, we talked about all these in more depth last week, but brought to light how somebody can lose their fortune
Is all together under.
through no fault of their own and what they suffer. And then he has his autobiographical book, because what was his secret?
He had to work in the factories when he was little.
Yeah, what happened to his father?
Also in the poorhouse.
Yes, his father was in debt, and he was sent to debtor's prison, and he was sent to work in a shoe polish factory. Yes. And do you remember his mother's great betrayal?
Yes.
Yes, that was very sad. So when his father got out of the whole family went into the prison. And when they got out, he wanted to come home. And his mother said, no, I think he should stay there. She wanted him to stay because they needed the money. But his father put his foot down, and so he didn't. But because of that traumatic experience in his youth, he was 12 years old, he brought such public awareness to the problem and the conditions. Because he had done that, do you remember this gentleman?
You took the pictures.
Yeah, he's the photographer. Somebody said it. Yes, I think Peggy said it. He's the photographer that went all around. He traveled all around, and he took photographs for photographic evidence of what was happening, because a lot of people were accusing Dickens of exaggerating. Dickens himself brought prominent people to these areas of London to show them for themselves. And then Lewis Hine is the one who went around and took photographs. Here are some of the photographs. This one's probably very familiar to you.
The young kids. Some of them weren't even 7 years old.
They were 5, you could work from the ages of 5 to 18, you were
Right.
a child laborer,
It
5.
was really bad.
It was very bad, it really was. It really was. And some of the children were working in the coal mines
Yes.
too, not just the factories, but also in the coal mines. All right, so that is a very brief introduction to what we did, or review of what we did last week, because we've got a lot to get to today. All right, does anybody know who we're talking about today?
Hemingway.
Yes.
Ernest.
What an amazing life this man led. So let's get to know him a little bit. All right, he was born July 21st, 1899, Oak Park, Illinois. This is the house. This is the house. They've made a museum out of it. They did that with Dickens as well, right? And he was born to Ed and Grace Hemingway. Grace is an interesting personality. Grace was an opera singer. She was an opera singer, and once she got married to Edmund, she had to give it up. She had to give it up. And she blamed her children. She made her children feel guilty because she could have been a great opera singer, and she never let them forget that she could have been a famous, she could have been on stage, she could have toured the world, she could have done all these things, but instead she was a mother. She also had another I guess, quirky thing about her. Let me show you this photo. All right, well, these are the children. And in Victorian times, it was not uncommon to dress. This is Ernest right here. Okay, this is little Ernest. And this is Ernest and his, oh no, I'm sorry, this is Ernest and his older sister. It was not uncommon to dress little children, little boys, in dresses. They wore dresses. That was not uncommon. What was uncommon in his situation is that, all right, this is his older sister and this is Ernest. The mother, Grace, forced him to dress in little girls' clothing and told people that they were twins, that they were twin girls. Do you think that played with his psyche?
I think so.
And this went on for years. So again, it's not uncommon in these times for little toddler boys, boys, to be dressed in dresses, but this was something highly unusual. The man you're looking for is right there. Did you notice this?
Yes.
That tipped you off to where he was?
Yeah, huh? Strange.
All right, so yeah. How crazy is that? It's awful. There was only one time during the year when he could wear boys' clothes. They had a cottage, so once a year the family went up and they took their vacation in this cottage, and he was allowed, there he is, okay? He's allowed to wear boys' clothes only during these 2 weeks of the year.
Did she have other boys?
No, I think there were 3 girls and 1 boy.
She didn't, oh, okay.
Yeah, but look at his sister. All right, so did it happen in the reverse? When I saw that photo, I'm like, did they make the girls dress like boys when they were in the car? I don't know. But she looks like she's got a very similar outfit on to her little brother. But when they're there at the cottage, now the father, here's Edmund, all right? He is really bullied by Grace. She's very dominant. She's a dominant woman. But once he gets up here, well, his real personality comes out. And he takes his son. And now that he's in boy clothes, he's going to teach him hunting and fishing. And it's just 2 weeks of doing guy stuff. All right? And Ernest loves it. He's just going to be doing all the guy stuff with his dad. And that was really the only time that he really had to bond with his dad. He was very often in deference to his mother. He told a story once that his mother made him feel so guilty that he would go whip himself so that he didn't have to put his mother through the trauma of having to whip him herself. So you can see that there was a lot of, psychological stuff happening with him as a young man. And then maybe later on, because Ernest Hemingway is really known for his drinking, right?
Yes.
Everybody would know that, like, if you said one thing to associate Ernest Hemingway with, you would probably say alcohol, drinking. And he did, he drank. Is that a form of self-medication?
Yes.
Because of, we have the answer. I was just kind of putting it out there rhetorically, and it works.
Yeah.
Oh.
It does.
All right, so is it any wonder he would want to get away? All right, so he's a young man, and what profession does he go into?
Reporter.
Journalism.
Yeah, journalism. He becomes a reporter. And this is really important. It's very important because Ernest Hemingway has a very unique style of writing. And the reason why he developed that style was right here when he becomes a reporter for a local newspaper. His mother got him the job. And he is learning how to be very concise. And this style of writing is called the iceberg theory, or the theory of omission. And you can read for yourself the thought behind the theory. All right, so there's all this information, and you got to boil it down to this much. And that was his style. That was his style of writing, was to be precise and concise. Okay, so what happens? World War I, the Great War breaks out, right? And he goes to join the army, but he's rejected because of his vision. He had eyesight problems, and so he could not join the army. So what did he do instead? Does anybody know?
Drove trucks.
What?
Drove trucks.
Yeah, he did. He drove an ambulance for the Red Cross.
That's great if you have no vision.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So he volunteers for the Red Cross, and they send him to Italy. He's in Italy, and he's driving ambulances. And he is anxious to get out into,
The war zone.
combat, the war zone. He wants to be in the thick of it. He's tired of just, doing this, running back and forth. In fact, he becomes a war hero, and he's not even in the military. Do you know how that happens? Do you know how he becomes a war hero? Well, he's in the ambulance, and he's driving out to the front lines. He's driving out into a combat zone because he has to make a very important delivery to the soldiers. Do you know what he decided was so important? They had to get to them.
Their mail.
Do you know what he had? He was delivering chocolate bars, chocolate rations to the soldiers, and when he was doing that, there was an explosion, and the story goes that even though he himself was wounded in the leg, he still saved another soldier. So he becomes a war hero. But he was wounded. We know he was wounded because he wound up in the hospital. There he is. He doesn't look unhappy about it, does he? He does not look, what?
Nurse.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to ask you. Why do you suppose he looks so happy in the hospital? What would make him so happy in the hospital? Look at, he's got an injury. There's no doubt about it, but he still looks like he's all right with that. And the reason for that, her name is Agnes. He falls in love with his nurse, Agnes. She's older than him. He's 19 and she was 27 at the time, and he just falls head over heels in love with her, and she's trying to put him off, but he's just coming on pretty strong. He's coming on pretty strong, and so that's the two of them together. And so she does see him, she goes on dates with him, and it's kind of a very intense time, isn't it? They're in Italy, it's wartime. He's recovering from an injury that he received in combat, and he's not even a soldier. And eventually he's going to be shipped home, right? And this romance is doomed to end. It has to end, doesn't it? Because he's going to go back home. She's American too, by the way. Yeah, she's not Italian, she's American. So when he gets home, they're riding back and forth to one another. He's still madly, madly, madly in love with her. But with the distance, what do you think she decides?
Dear John.
Yeah, he gets a Dear John letter from her, and she says in the letter's been preserved. She says in the letter that age difference is just too much. You know, you're just a young kid, you're always going to be that much younger than me, it's not going to get better with time, and she didn't want to hurt him, and she was concerned about how he would react had she told him while they were there in Italy. So he gets a Dear John letter. His heart is broken, absolutely broken. And so what do you think his dear mother does?
Yeah.
She kicked him out. She kicked him out of the house. She kicks him out of the house. She says, you know, you're just moping around here. You're not doing anything. You're just unproductive. Get out and, you know, become a man. But actually, as cruel as that sounds, very insensitive, it was probably just what he needed, because he goes to Chicago and he works for the Toronto Daily Star in Chicago. All right? And he is going to become a war correspondent. And while he's there, he meets this lady. Yes, Hadley. Do you need some water?
I'm okay.
You're all set? All right, so he meets this lady, Hadley. Do you know Hadley's older than him too?
Oh, God.
Yeah, there's a pattern developing here.
Yeah.
Yes, but Hadley actually is the love of his life. She's the love of his life, at least for now. And so she's okay with the age difference. And so, what?
A comment
Yeah,
on the difference. If all
Eight.
men will marry the older women, there'll be less widows in the world. Because men
Say that?
die.
all right, Amnon's saying, if you marry an older woman, there would be less widows because men die sooner than women.
Be less children
There
too.
should be a law.
Pat, you're always quick with a comeback. All right, so she's older. It's not bothering her that there's an age difference. There's also something else really pretty great about her. She has a trust fund. Oh, yeah, she has a trust fund. All right, now.
Lenny.
Yes, so now he's working for the Toronto Star, and they're sending him out, he talks them into this, as a correspondent, and he's being assigned to, does anybody know where?
Europe.
That deal with?
Paris.
Paris.
Paris. So Ernest and Hadley go to Paris, all right? And while they're in Paris, well, they're meeting all kinds of amazing people. This is right after the war. So now the war is over, and there is somebody there, a great American poet is also in Paris at this time, and that is Gertrude Stein.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Gertrude Stein,
Part of the Montmartre,
she, what?
becomes part of the Montmartre group.
She is introducing young Ernest Hemingway to all of the great suffering artists of the time.
She ran a salon.
Yeah, she did.
Yep, yep. And she's helping him with his writing. So she helps him, so the paper, being a journalist, helps him form his writing style. It's Gertrude Stein that really polishes his writing style. He hasn't published anything yet, but she's the one helping him do that. She's the one that's introducing him to all of these other very interesting people, these other artists, and that's where you see his writing is being defined greater and greater by the influences that he has by these people. These are the people. And what does she call them?
Lost
The
generation.
lost generation. And what she means by that, that's Gertrude Stein that calls this group artists, The Lost Generation. It's right after the war, and they're feeling a hopelessness, and they're feeling like, their ideals have been taken away from them, have been torn down. Everything they believed in was not true. And so they're rebuilding from scratch. They're starting all over again. And here's a little clip about The Lost Generation.
America is my country. Paris is my hometown. The same was true for the other poets, writers, and artists that became known as the Lost Generation. During and after the First World War, some of America's best and brightest young artists made their way to Paris. They drank to excess, carried on illicit affairs, and occasionally found the discipline to write or paint.
The Lost Generation was a group of writers primarily, artists generally, who were educated on the values and virtues of European culture, a culture that largely existed in books. At the time of the First World War, when most of them were just coming into their maturity, they suddenly felt as though it was upon them to go and save that culture.
Man opens his eyes, takes a look, relaxes, and rediscovers life, gripped by a wild desire to dance, let off steam, scream, at long last stand upright, shout, and squander, described painter Fernand Léger.
Being young was enriching if you lived in Paris, and you survived. Sort of a great gasp of relief that now the world is safe, and we can glory in it and enjoy it and feast on it.
This is Paris, and the artists ball every year, and everybody just broke all the rules.
Paris in the 1920s was a bohemia, and nothing represented its free spirit like the infamous artist balls, where revelers tried to keep both their wits and extravagant costumes about them during the course of the evening.
And what do they bring back? They bring back a sense of culture. They bring back a sense of a new way of looking at tradition, a new way of virtually inventing what literature is about. They come back with a new language. They come back with a fresh way of speaking. This is the spare language that Stein helps Hemingway refine. But they also come back with subjects. They come back writing about gritty lives in American cities, a fresh sense of urbanism. They come back to a sense of writing that's tuned in to the music that's being generated, the jazz, and the fact that they have to go to Paris in order to do that is terrifically ironic. These people have to leave America in order to, how shall I say it, for at least cultural, literary purposes, in order to invent America.
So that's the Lost Generation. And who's a part of the Lost Generation? Who's he rubbing elbows with? F. Scott Fitzgerald, yes. Who's this?
No.
Yeah, Picasso, Pablo Picasso. Yeah. Yes, so all these great things are happening, all this great creativity, and so Ernest Hemingway is among that. And what does he refine? What is he known for? Minimalist style of writing, getting right to the heart of everything. And he is famous for saying, write one true sentence, the truest sentence that you know. All right, so there they are. They're having a great time. He hasn't published anything yet, but he is writing. He's writing a lot. And they're living off of Hadley's trust fund, remember? Well, they're also starting a family, and he is very interested in not using up his wife's trust fund. So she was away, and he asked her to bring some of his writings to him. So she does. She gets on a train, and then she has a little mishap on the train, and all of his writings, she brought all of it, everything he had ever written, and somehow she lost it. She lost all of it except for 3 stories. And she was terrified to tell him. And he was like, oh, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. I mean, we still have the carbons, remember carbon?
Yes.
And then guess what she says to him? I brought the carbons too and I lost it. It was gone. It was completely, totally gone. There's a whole bunch of work by Ernest Hemingway that we will never know about because she lost it. But apparently they made up because look, there's their son. So they have a son, this is John or Jack, they called him Jack. And also at this time, they have gone to Spain, and what does he become absolutely enamored of in Spain?
Bullfighting.
Yes, bullfighting. He thinks that this is just absolutely fabulous, and he loves it. He's enamored of it. While they're there too, hi Conrad. They meet up. Hadley meets up with somebody that she just becomes instant friends with, okay? Her name's Pauline. She's a socialite, Pauline Pfeiffer. She's a socialite. There's the 2 of them together. Any comments?
She's kind of like, Stein.
Androgynous.
It is, isn't it? But she's a socialite, and so she has money, and she becomes a good friend of Hadley. So there's Hadley and Pauline. And as they're hanging out together, well, guess who else becomes infatuated with Pauline? There's a threesome. There's an absolute threesome. So now we have the family. We've got little Jack, Ernest, and we've got Hadley and Pauline. And they become an absolute threesome. Well, Ernest falls in love with Pauline. He falls in love with Pauline, and now he loves both of them. Hadley says, because it becomes very apparent, Hadley says, I'm not going to divorce you unless you 2 separate for 100 days. She gave 100 days. And if at the end of the 100 days you still want a divorce, then I will agree to it. Well, what happens is they never make the 100 days. He's so miserable. He's so unhappy. He's so torn over which lady to choose that Hadley, this all sounds so incredible to me. Hadley can't bear to see him in such torment, emotional torment, that she just decides she'll bow out. So she'll bow out. All right, so now they have to, Pauline and Ernest have to leave Europe, and they're going to go to Key West. They're going to go to Florida. All right? He's divorced Hadley, and now he's going to marry Pauline. They go to Key West, and this is his favorite hangout. Here's his favorite hangout. Sloppy Joe's Bar in Key West. They get married, and he sets off on a brand new lifestyle. What was he just living? Let's think about this. He's in Paris, he's in Spain, he's hanging around with all these great innovators of art and literature, and now he's gone full-blown
Native?
Yeah, sportsman. He's gone full-blown sportsman, right? He is entering all of these fishing contests down there, and every time he enters a contest, he wins. And the natives are getting irritated with him because they used to win. They were cash prizes. And so they're becoming very irritated with him because he keeps winning all the cash. So he says to them, I'll tell you what. Because now he's the sportsman, now he's the, the masculine guy. I'll tell you what, I'll box you for it. Because he's also a boxer. I'll box you for it, and if you win, I'll give you the prize money. If I win, I keep the prize money. Guess what? He kept all the prize money. So when Ernest Hemingway's in, he's all in. He had a complete change of lifestyle, a total change of lifestyle. But his children will tell you that when he's in Key West and when he's in Cuba, that was the happiest time of his life. Okay, so he writes A Farewell to Arms. What's that about? That's about Agnes. Really, right? That's about Agnes. And that does very, very well. And so he is now becoming independent. He doesn't need any, his wife's a socialite, his second wife's a socialite. His first wife had the trust fund, and now he's able to support them on his own. They're doing very well. They're doing well. This book is doing very, very well. And tragedy strikes. Tragedy strikes. His father, does anybody know? His father committed suicide, that's exactly right. And not only that, there is a family trait. So he has several members of his family that committed suicide, and he says, I will probably go the same way. He wrote that in a letter, actually, so we still have that. He says, I will probably go the same way. Now, his father and he have a complicated relationship, as you can imagine. You remember, the mother was very dominant, and he only had a couple of weeks in the summer with his dad to bond. And so he and Pauline have 2 children. He and Hadley have 1 child. So that's Jack, Gregory, and Patrick. He has 3 boys. And in interviews with, here is a collage of photos of Ernest Hemingway with his boys. And the boys say that their father, when he was there, when he was present, he was fully present. And he brought them, out into the woods and deep sea fishing and shooting and hunting, and he was just all in when he was there. But he seldom was there. Is that reminiscent? It seems very reminiscent of how his father was with him. He only had those 2 weeks in the summer. Ernest Hemingway would be writing. He didn't want anybody to disturb him when he was writing. He had a separate place, a separate smaller home for when he was writing. He would be away, so he was away a lot of the time, and then he would make up for it by lavishing his sons with his attention when they were with him. He has an expedition, right? We're all familiar with that. So he goes from this great deep sea fisherman, he goes to Africa, and what does he do there? He becomes a great what?
Hunter.
He becomes a great hunter, and he is absolutely inspired by that. One of his greatest short stories, you probably are all familiar with this, was a result of his safari in Africa. Now, he's been married to Pauline for a while. Pauline's a devout Catholic. She doesn't like children. They have the 2 boys. Yeah, Pauline is not like, she's not a kid kind of a person, right? She had very difficult deliveries too. But anyways, she just does not want any more children. That's really solidly in her head. But as a devout Catholic, she also does not believe in birth control. So she doesn't want any more children, and she doesn't believe in birth control. Need I say more?
Zero sex.
I don't need to say any more to you, right? Do you see a divorce on the horizon? Yes, there's a divorce on the horizon now. And so while he is in Key West, he meets this lady. Are you familiar with Martha Gellhorn? Yes, she's a journalist in her own right. She's a very strong woman, which he's not really used to. She's got her own career. She's got her own fame. She's very courageous, and nothing will get in the way of her career, and he's absolutely smitten with her, and she with him, right? Because by now, he's well known. So he divorces Pauline, and he marries Martha. And they move to where?
Cuba.
Yes, this is their home in Cuba. This is their home in Cuba. While he's in Cuba, he becomes very well known because not for his writing or for his sportsmanship, but for his partying, yes. So now his books are becoming movies, all right? So he has Gary Cooper is in one of the remakes of his stories, and he hangs out with all of the most famous people of the day, and he invites them to Havana, and they go out and they have this spectacular nightlife together. And so he's in the papers for this now, you know, when he wants to be known more for his writing. Well, while this is going on, the Spanish Civil War breaks out, and Martha is not going to stick around. She's going to go be in the middle of that. She's going to go be a part of that. So she goes as a war correspondent to Spain, and she's covering this while Ernest decides he's going to stay. He's going to stay in Cuba at their home, and what he decides he's going to do is he's going to help out the effort by taking his boat out into the ocean and scanning to make sure that there are no like enemy submarines or enemy ships or any kind of nefarious vessels out there. And as he's doing this, he gets free gas from the United States government for his boat. So guess who calls him into question on this? J. Edgar Hoover.
Oh, God.
J. Edgar Hoover says, wait a minute. And so his morals are being questioned. His wife's abroad covering the Spanish Civil War at the time, and he's starting to feel like, oh, I better do something. I better do something serious here. So he goes over, he's also going to cover, as a war correspondent, he's going to cover the Spanish Civil War. Well, while he's doing that, he's definitely not going to be outdone by his wife. He's very annoyed with her, by the way, for having gone and done that. She should have stayed and been, his wife. But she went off and she was her own person. So while he's out there, he's doing some pretty incredible things. One of the things that he does is he takes off his non-combat correspondence badge. They were a badge. He takes that off and he presents himself as a colonel, and he leads a troop of French soldiers into battle. He's not supposed to be doing that. He had also kept grenades and other kind of weapons in where he was staying, in the apartment where he was staying, and he's not supposed to do that either. But guess what? He's got friends now in high places. Everybody loves him, you know, because he's just a great guy. And all of the charges against him, there were official charges brought up against him. You can't pretend to be a colonel. Anyway, so all of the charges against him were dropped. And in fact, not only were they dropped, but he was awarded, he got a bronze medal. He got a bronze medal for his time as a non-soldier in the Spanish Civil War. Oh my gosh. So anyways, he's really mad at Martha, right? Of course he would be mad at Martha. What do you think he does next? What is his MO?
Get divorced.
All right, he's going to get divorced from Martha.
Someone else.
And he got somebody else.
Yeah, he's got somebody else now. He divorces Martha, and now we're on to the fourth wife. We're on to the fourth wife, Mary. All right, Mary is not in any way like Martha. She is much more, she's a journalist too, but she's not interested in her own career. She's interested in his career. All right, so he's happy now. He's in Cuba. He's married to this lady. He's very happy. And then all of a sudden, in the late 40s, a whole series of really tragic things occur. All right, first of all, you remember his son, Patrick. His son, Patrick, gets arrested for possession of marijuana.
Oh.
All right. He gets into a car accident. He's been arrested for possession of marijuana. You remember Pauline is the mother of this one. So Patrick calls his mom, you know, come help me. He's all upset. Come help me, get me out of jail. So she goes and she gets him out of jail. And the very next day, Pauline died. She died suddenly, very unexpectedly, and she died of a tumor. So Ernest is very upset about that and tragically blames his son, thinking that he had caused his mother so much turmoil that it expedited the tumor, and that because she died the next day after she bailed him out, and they did not speak. So that was the end of their relationship. He blamed him for killing his mother. I just find that so tragic. And then the year after that, his mother, Grace, passed away. All right, and then after that happened, this all happened within like 2 or 3 years, a short time span. He wrote this book, Across the River and Into the Trees, and he got bad reviews for this book, and he had never had bad reviews before. It had never happened. And so he was sinking into this depression, and what he decided to do was fight back. He's going to fight back. And so he really focused, and he really wrote something. Does anybody know what he wrote next? Excellent. Wow, you're so great. Yeah, you're all doing really, really well. He wrote The Old Man in the Sea as a follow-up to this critic's bad review of his prior book. And The Old Man in the Sea, for that book, he received what?
The Pulitzer.
Yeah. So he had quite a comeback, didn't he? Yeah, he had quite a comeback. But unfortunately, that was the pinnacle, and then it started to go back down again. He decided that he would go on one last safari. He went back, yes.
So when did he make the connection with Idaho?
Oh, I'm going to get to that. I'll get to that, yes. After Castro. Fidel Castro.
Very late.
Because he couldn't go back to Cuba.
Yeah, he had to leave Cuba. But we'll get to that. So when he went for this safari, he actually had been in 2 plane crashes. The second plane crash, though, he actually had to headbutt the door of the plane to open the door. He's older now. He's been on safari. He's been injured. He's had all kinds of war wounds. He's not, a spring chicken anymore. And he headbutts his way through the plane door to get everybody out. He had to get everybody out. And so he suffers a really bad injury from that. He goes back to Cuba, so here we are, right? He goes back to Cuba, and there's the revolt, and Fidel Castro comes into power in 1959, and he tried to stay. Because he loved it there, but ultimately in 1960, the following year, he had to leave. So he and Mary had to leave, and that's when they moved to Idaho. Ketchum, Idaho is where they moved to. And a culmination of all the things, the plane crash and all the injuries that he had been through, he started to really suffer severe depression. It was so bad that they sent him to the Mayo Clinic. And while he's at the Mayo Clinic, in that time, what they did was they did electric shock therapy on him. And that really
made it worse.
What?
Made it worse.
Made it worse, made it much worse. And then they released him, they sent him back home, and Mary actually found him trying to kill himself, stalked him, sent him back to Mayo Clinic, and guess how they treated him the second time?
Trauma treatments.
Shock treatment.
More. And so then they released him, and even though she was highly criticized, because even though she had discovered him trying to shoot himself, she didn't do anything to put away the guns in the house. She was highly criticized for that. Mm-hmm. She brought him back home after his second trip at the Mayo Clinic, and then he shot himself.
Yes.
He shot himself and committed suicide. Originally, she said he was cleaning his gun.
No.
But it was determined that no, he wasn't, and I will spare you the gruesome details of how they know he wasn't cleaning the gun, but that it was suicide. And so sadly, tragically, that is the end of the life of Ernest Hemingway.
What was the date of the suicide? What year was that?
Yeah, how old was he?
I think it was 1963, but I have to double check. I have to double check. But it wasn't long after he left Cuba. Now, a sad footnote to this, right? He had 3 sons, and one of the sons had 2 daughters. Did you know that?
Yes.
So Margot, yes. So he had 2 daughters, and they both became actresses. Mm-hmm. And Margot is the older one, and sadly, this trait in the family, Margot also committed suicide. But the younger sister is fine. She's still alive, and she's doing well. But that's an extraordinary, tragic, but amazing, astounding life. It's as if he lived 10 lives in one lifetime. Now, next week, we're going to look at another in the group of the lost generation. You know who this is?
Oh, God.
Zelda.
Exactly, yes. So we're going to look at this incredible story, and then the following week, we're going to take a look at George Orwell. Yes, I know. I thought that might interest you. So we'll follow up with the Lost Generation, and then we'll move on down the line. All right? Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for coming.